Welcome to BVTV Network, coming to you from the UK studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. The COVID pandemic has brought many leaders to a stark reality. Some have got it, some are yet to get it. This interview aims to help both. Extensive research shows that a minimum of 1 in 4 employees aim to move employer this year. Now, this is mainly because of the way they were handled by their leaders during lockdown. So we're facing a tsunami of change. Now, I say 1 in 4, and many think that that's a conservative estimate. Just think about the impact on any business, perhaps yours, of losing so much talent and knowledge, just as we need the effort to achieve recovery and growth. So what can be done? My guest today is an award-winning talent retention expert and author of the best-selling book, Cohesion Culture, Proven Principles to Retain Your Top Talent. So please meet Dr. Troy Hall. Hello, Dr. Troy.
Well, greetings, Malcolm. How are you today?
Oh, I'm just, it's sunshine here in the UK. So when sun shines, I'm feeling good. Where are you, though?
Well, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and I like to say that even when it rains, the sun still shines. And I know that has to be important for individuals who live in the United Kingdom, as we have traveled there many times and have always had to take our bumbershoot with us.
Yes, without doubt. Now, the Charleston, is it still dance there?
Well, the dance, of course, has been lasting for almost a century. And do you know that the Charleston actually came from an African tribe dance? Which is very interesting. I actually refer to that in the book, in the Cohesion Culture. So interesting that you asked me that. But no, unfortunately for me, I am that person who will get on the dance floor, who will move erratically. Someone will think that I might need medical attention, but yet I'm still grooving to my own sound in my head.
Yeah, I'm just as bad, Dr. Troy. I'm just as bad. The paramedics stand by every time I have to go on the dance floor. Dr. Troy, the figures I just mentioned about talent ready to move are frightening. And so this interview will be very valuable to all leaders. Viewers and leaders, I'll be talking to Dr. Troy in 3 parts. Now, first I'll ask him, what's gone wrong? Why is so much talent ready to move on? In part 2, I'll ask him about his principles on retaining talent. And in part 3, I'm taking a diversion to talk about his mother, Fanny, and her leadership lessons. Dr. Troy, before we get into our 3-part talk, can you please briefly introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners? Who is Dr. Troy Hall, and why your passion for talent retention?
Well, Malcolm, thank you so much for that opportunity. Now, for most individuals, they can read about me. I am an open book, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn and in my website, and you'll find all you can find about me. Just Google me, Dr. Troy Hall, and you'll find me. But I thought it might be fun to tell you a few things that people wouldn't know about me that's found on a resume. So first of all, I married my high school sweetheart in 1977. Oh, and if you're visually watching, don't let the gray hair fool you.
No.
We had 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and we at one time had 4 generations all living under the same roof. So that was a very interesting opportunity for that. And so some of the other fun things I've done, I had an opportunity to visit the court castle, and I had a chance to kiss the Blarney Stone. And of course, if you understand the tradition, you have to kiss the Blarney Stone upside down. Yeah. So as we're making our way up the rickety stairs that they've used to reinforce the area so that you can actually do that, this was prior to the pandemic, I looked over at my wife and I said, honey, do you think if I kiss the Blarney Stone, it'll cancel out all the schmooze I already have? And she says, well, honey, we'll just have to see. So we go up through it. I put myself on the apparatus, lean back over, kiss the Blarney Stone. Now, meanwhile, over 3 million people have probably kissed that stone, and no one cared. Today, we would never do that.
No.
So later on in the trip, after I've shared a story or two with some other folks, my wife leaned over at me and she says, remember when you thought you might lose your schmooze if you kissed the Blarney Stone? I said, yes. What do you think? She says, oh, don't worry, your rhetoric is still intact.
Well, lovely stories. Hey, and here today, this very day, is my 35th wedding anniversary. So, I mean, hey, we're both doing all right, aren't we?
Absolutely. Congratulations. And I'm assuming like you, it's to the same person, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. And 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren. So we're 2 grandchildren behind you, but don't worry, they're young enough to start to deliver a few more. Dr. Troy, let's start part 1. What's gone wrong? Why is there so much talent ready to move on? Surely it's not just down to the COVID situation. Is it perhaps old leaders not moving forward to understanding the generational needs of their teams?
Well, first of all, let's start by framing the conversation around cohesion culture, which is where much of my conversation will lead to. So, the cohesion culture is a safe workspace where people have a sense of belonging, are valued, and share in mutual commitment. And this opportunity, when cohesion is present and everyone is operating under with those 3 strategic principles, then you have performance, and with performance you have engagement. And engagement is that missing piece. So what we also know statistically is 63% of all employees are looking to grow, develop, and advance. If your organization is not doing it, you have already started the process of having individuals look to see where they can be satisfied in that area. The one thing I know for sure in this shifting workforce, it's not your grandpa's workforce anymore. So the change that's happening is that individuals are seeking autonomy. They're seeking an opportunity to really make a difference, to have their voice heard. They'll choose places to work that have good corporate social responsibility. And as a result, we've seen that the pandemic sort of stabilized a little bit of the movement within the workforce. But what happened during that pandemic is that some of the employees were not taken care of, and it was even worse than it was before the pandemic. The one thing I've noticed with some organizations is that, they have poor leadership, but they don't always want to acknowledge it. So when you have the pandemic and people are no longer around other people, they're now left to themselves. What happens is those poor leaders tend to show up even more because they don't have anyone else filling in the gaps for the times when they weren't as friendly, they weren't as cooperative, they weren't as available, and they could get what they needed from someone else. Meanwhile, for a good bit of individuals, especially in the US, 62% of the US population was actually the working force was actually forced to work from home during the pandemic. So you had this large gap of people not having the connectivity that they normally would have when it was easy to have face-to-face. These companies have not put programs in place. They have not put Zoom, Teams, WebEx, or Skype for Business in place that actually allow for the interaction of individuals. So realistically, that's what we're seeing. And then with the safety and security and protection issue, here's what's also happening. So in addition to the stuff I've mentioned to you before, we have to remember Maslow's theory, and it works right now. We're seeing it right in front of us. When people worked from home, their safety and security was protected. They're afraid to go back out. So as a result of it, they don't have an opportunity for self-actualization. So what they're doing is protecting themselves, which makes perfect sense in the way we are from human behavior. It's all about our need to survive, which is built in as inherent as part of our DNA. Just as important as it is for us to belong, which means to cohabitate, to collaborate, to cooperate, to be along with other human beings, then we also have this need to survive. So it's a combination of all those things that are actually happening in the marketplace. And for those leaders who really want to try to get some handle on it, they can begin by establishing that culture within their organization that it will allow for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they can do so by creating that cohesion culture, which will be their first start to stabilizing their employment workforce.
Yeah, that Maslow's theory that you talked about beforehand, I congratulate you on that, because I've been trying in some ways across many interviews to pull together, and you've very succinctly done that with introducing Maslow there, because it is that safety. And I find it, I was traveling driving 20,000 miles, let alone flying every year. And since March 2020, I've moved about a yard, but I've met 500 plus viewers and chief execs on these interviews that have been all over the world. But what I have noticed is exactly what you're saying. about poor leadership. I'm not saying there were poor leaders. I'm just saying poor leadership. So when we first started off last March 2020 on this mission that we're on at the moment, there, many CEOs wouldn't come onto Zoom unless they had a PA on one side and a techie person on the other. They were so frightened of communication. They had no empathy with the on screen and everything. And I think that's where they've sort of let the people down a lot, because if they couldn't do it chatting to me, what they're going to be like with their workforce, where perhaps in the past they just sent an email out.
Right. And that is the issue, is that many organizations, they were in such survival mode. That's, like I said, they didn't get to self-actualization. So they didn't think of, how do I take care of the employees who are staying at home, who are working remotely? How did I continue to communicate? I had one organization tell me, as I was working with them on a consulting project, that the reason that they wanted to force people into a new employee orientation program face-to-face, because they said they were getting complaints from some of their new employees that they brought in, that they did not know their team and did not know their supervisor. Yeah. And I said to them, it's whose fault is that? The person who's really responsible is leadership. Because the new employee, whether you're virtual or whether you're face-to-face, should be introduced to their team. They should know their supervisor. There should be some communication. Those protocols should be set up. If you would have meetings when you were face-to-face, you have meetings when you're virtual. Yeah. It doesn't change. And why all of a sudden we would think we need a completely new playbook to help us figure out how to take care of people surprises me. And I also find it interesting, especially in the US, that we sort of have adopted a philosophy of working from home is like the brand new thing that ever happened. Like, we didn't realize. I mean, I'm working with organizations around the globe that have had virtual teams for decades. And even, and they're very successful, and it does not destroy their culture. Culture is destroyed by the way people interact with each other, not by where they're physically located.
Yeah. Dr. Troy, before we move to part 2, I'd like to remind viewers and listeners of your website URL or website address, which is, well, viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me, but for listeners, let me help spell that out for you. It's Dr. Troy Hall, but let me spell it out for you. All the W's, DR for doctor, just DR, Troy, TROY, Hall.com. So that's drtroyhall.com. Your book, and you've published many others, is called Cohesion Culture, Proven Principles to Retain Your Top Talent. And I also want to mention the other book that we'll chat about, and viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me, Fanny Rules, A Mother's Leadership Lessons That Never Grow Old. And Fanny was your late departed mother. Troy, let's start part 2. And please set us on the road to some answers. What's key in retaining talent? What do today's leaders need to learn? Is this where cohesion culture really kicks in?
Well, yes, it does, because the strategic framework of belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment creates a causal effect in your company, not correlational. And so what happens is, when you have those 3 elements present, then you have performance, and that performance leads to engagement. It's not just correlational, where you take 2 data points and create some statistical relationship. It's actually cause and effect. So, if, with your permission, let me help our listeners and viewers understand that. Right. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Okay. The first thing is, you have experienced a rainy day, have you not?
A lot here in England, yes.
Absolutely. And whenever you have a rainy day, do you always open an umbrella?
I do.
You do.
Unless I was taking the dog for a walk, in which case I would be all covered up in hats and weatherproofs. Yes. Exactly.
Great. Exactly. And have you had the opportunity to be out in the sun, to be out in the beach? And have you seen umbrellas opened at the beach on a sunny day?
I have, most certainly. People sitting under parasols, yes.
Great. So what happens is, I can create a correlation between rainy days and umbrellas. There's a strong correlational relationship for that. However, opening an umbrella does not cause a rainy day. A rainy day does not cause an umbrella to open. And although we will continue to use correlational data to help us make forecasts and predictions at our work, if we really want to have the strongest predictor of behavior, we need a causal effect. That's why cohesion works. My PhD is in global leadership and entrepreneurship. My dissertation was in group dynamics with an emphasis on cohesion. And so that is the argument that is made is, and in an organization, you simply take the strategic framework of belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment and lay it over top of your HR strategies and practices and leadership. And then you figure out, where are you weak? Where are you strong? What are things that you want to do differently? And that is how you will create the culture that's right for you. Not every cohesion culture is exactly the same. There are differences because there are different nuances, stories, rituals, and traditions that happen. So it is the very beginning place of where we look for cohesion. And I also give something very practical to leaders that I'll give to your listeners and viewers. And that is, here's what you do tomorrow. The very next day you go into work, or you have an opportunity to interact with individuals on work, whether it's through Zoom, some online software or whatever. Listen for greetings. How do people interact with each other? For instance, if you have a group of individuals on Zoom and no one is talking and waiting for the meeting to start, that gives you an indication as to kind of the atmosphere, the greetings that you're seeing. When you're face to face, you can hear whether people are talking and how they're responding. Also, you can move forward in listening for laughter. Now, this is not the Hardy, har, knee slapping type of laughter. We're not talking about, Laurel and Hardy or something of that nature. What we're doing is the lighthearted spirit that you find within the organization. Are people sharing lighthearted stories where there's a chuckle or two, there's a little humor, there's a little bit of a free spirit? Because if not, you may have a very stressed organization. And when individuals are stressed, they are not going to respond very well to their work. You might think they are, but they will not, because that pressure and tension will eventually mount up, and it makes an impact in performance. Yeah. And then the last thing is what I call that area of camaraderie or affirmation, where it can come with fist bumps, high fives, handshakes. It can come with thanking someone for the job they're doing and telling them exactly what they did, connecting the work. All of those really make up that camaraderie or affirmation. So you take those three elements and your observations will make a huge impact on you to begin to say, do you then need a doctor to come in and help you with what's happening in your organization? And if you do, I hope you'll call me, because I'm just what the doctor has ordered.
Excellent. I love that. But I do take very much what you were saying there. I'll just do a quick fist bump with you, if you don't mind. Yeah. When I was doing live workshops, or a big conference or something, if I didn't feel people were talking to each other and buzzing with each other, I'd come off with some sort of icebreaker, like make them ask each other, their neighbor, what are you proud about? So we would get some sort of buzz going. Otherwise, I knew the rest of the event would be cold, because it's no more different, is it, on virtual?
It's exactly the same, exactly what all the things that you would normally do in person, you have to find a way to invent them virtually.
Yeah. Dr. Troy, my third part. We talk here on BVTV about today's leaders and the new skills, and I put inverted commas around the new there, they need, such as agility, visibility, consciousness, and so on. But in your book, Funny Rules, you say there are some leadership lessons that will never grow old. What would you like to say about this to today's leaders?
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to talk about the book, because my mom is the star of the book. And so let me just give you a little bit of a background. When I was 12 years old, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. We lived in a small rural town in West Virginia here in the United States, and we had poor economic conditions, limited education, and we were about 30 to 45 minutes from the nearest medical facility. About 50 years ago, when someone was diagnosed with cancer, the prognosis of that diagnosis is that they're going to die.
Yeah.
And we actually thought that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But mom actually chose to live. And so what mom said to me was, she said, prior to me understanding that I was going to have breast cancer, I was going to live. She said that being poor was a matter of circumstance, not choice. Having cancer was a circumstance, not choice. So the first lesson she taught me was, young man, she says, make sure you understand that your character will always be a reflection of your choices, not your circumstances. And that has guided me. Mom was really my first mentor. She was the caregiver. She was the nurturer. My dad was the protector and provider. And by the way, I have a great relationship with my dad, and you'll see a few little segments of that in the book if you choose to get it. And so Mom lived, believe it or not, 43 years beyond that awful summer.
Wow.
I nurtured her back to health. That was my responsibility during the school year, during the summer between the school years. I actually, that was my job. And so I took care of her, the house, for Dad. So Mom still had her ups and downs through that process. And later in life, she was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. And as you know, Alzheimer's steals your memories. Alzheimer's stole Mom, they stole her memories. So this book is a tribute to her leadership legacy. It is 31 teachable moments wrapped around 9 rules. That's good from the backyard to the boardroom. It's great for a new generation of leaders who may just need a little Fanny of their own.
Yes, that's lovely. And it's sad that your mother's no longer with us, but what nice memories you got that you're kindly sharing with us there. Sadly, Troy, I'm going to have to dance my way from Charleston. But before I do, people talk about the value of their brands, their products, their services, their channels, location, and so on. But by far, the biggest value they should focus on is their people. People make profits, not those other things. My guest today, Dr. Troy Hall, has, I trust, not just made you think, but set you on that successful path of cohesion culture. Thanks, Dr. Troy, for an inspiring interview.
Well, thank you, Malcolm. I really appreciate the opportunity for you to let me talk about both of my books. They both ended up our bestsellers. Fanny Rules actually is #1 in business and professional humor. And the really good news for anyone listening is my proceeds of the book benefit the Alzheimer's Association. And of course, we still have a lot of individuals who are looking forward to the Cohesion Culture book, and it is the basis of my consulting and my executive coaching work. And you were just brilliant today, asking me some questions and allowing me to delve into that. Really, I hope your listeners have really felt that that this information was really great for them too.
Thank you. Well, we'll do a fist bump to that, should we, Troy?
Absolutely.
Dr. Troy, there we go. Fist bump, Dr. Troy. Thank you.